I first discovered the band and Will King was the vocalist, and they have such a massive range. When I found out that they were leaving, I thought, well, rip. This band, there's no way you're going to find someone who can do that again. And then somehow they found you. How was your kind of confidence level coming in to fill those shoes, as it were?
What a complex question.
You've got this kind of setup. What is it? There's a sort of tap pad, but it's not like a drum kit sample pad. It's more finger tap. What is that you tap on?
And it's so sick. It's like a big touchpad pretty much. And it's got X and Y coordinates, and then it's got depth perception as well. So you can do like velocity sensitivity.
What? I almost think the strangest thing, the most surprising thing you could do would be for your next song to be a very straight-laced, like straight-up pop rock song. Is that likely, or is that just unlikely based on the influences and the style of songwriting and the way that things come out?
Can I answer with the eyes emoji? You know, no, I think you kind of bang on the money, actually.
I am so excited to have the opportunity to talk to my guests today. This band, when I discovered them, I was so surprised and delighted by the variety of sounds they have to offer, sometimes within the same song itself, but every part of it seems to be done at a very high quality. And the band seems to be going from strength to strength, even through the change of a pivotal member, such as a lead vocalist. So I'm so delighted to get into some of the details of the songwriting processes and how they see that balance of sounds within their songs. So vocalist Liam and synth master Connor from Windwaker, thank you so much for joining me. And I suppose to start, where do we find you in your release process? I understand there's an album coming out very soon. Is it done and you're just waiting, or are you still kind of tweaking, mixing, mastering? Where are you in that process right now?
We've had this album done since December last year, so that was when we'd sent all the files to get off to get sent to be mastered. So yeah, we've been sitting on this material for a little while now, and we've just been so excited to finally announce that it's coming out, because we've had a lot of questions and a lot of people messaging being like, oh, surely there's an album, surely there's this, and we've kind of alluded to it, but yeah, finally getting to announce it and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of a release date. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Wow. So waiting since that is quite a long time. So then when you're releasing the singles, you must be, I assume, extraordinarily excited in anticipation of what do people think of this, because you've been waiting for people to hear it for so long. How do you deal with each release day of an individual song? What is that day like for yourselves?
The day for me is normally just stressing about social media and just like sitting there setting up the ads and the posts and all that back end stuff, to be honest. We're still very DIY in that department.
Yeah, I think it's the coordination of release day, isn't it? Like, it's making sure that everything's going up at the right time and executing upon the plan that we sort of have made for and have been trying to stick to for, you know, like I said, over 6 months now. We've had this sequence of singles planned for a while. So yeah, making sure that it's actually been all coordinated and is being executed upon is very stressful. But I don't know. I feel like they're just like my birthday, really. Every time we've released a single, I've been at my day job or something like that, and I get to sort of tell somebody in my day that, oh, we've just put out a new song, and then they end up putting it up on the TV at work and streaming the song, and yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, so far, I every single song, I mean, I don't know if I'm biased because I like the sound of your band, but like, they've all been great. I think the reception surely has been pretty positive for all of them. You've not had one where you're going, oh, I expected people to like this, and no one has. That's not been the case, right? And in fact, your most recent single, Break the Rules, I think is my favorite.
Wow.
When you finished a song like that and you first listened to it from end to end, do you have a sense within yourself that like, oh, we've nailed this. This is a banger. People are going to lose their minds. Or are you still kind of unsure of how the response might be?
I think in the case of a song like Break the Rules, that song came together in its sort of fundamental parts very early on. And I think we knew that I think just due to the construction of, say, the chorus, for example, like it came together in this very organic way where we're all in a room together and we're sort of almost kind of mouth mushing a chorus, but like we've got this kind of, we've got these sentences that are kind of staying around. And while we started Break the Rules, excuse me, while we started Break the Rules quite early on in the process of writing the album, we actually didn't. It was probably one of the last ones we actually finished. So you know, it did go through a lot of development and a lot of changes. You know, and I think it took a little while to be like, okay, this song is now done. But I think we always had an inkling that that song would be one of the singles. It had too much of an earworm, catchy melody and chorus that, yeah, it was inevitable that that was going to come out as a single before the album.
I think that sounds pretty consistent with what is one of the strengths of your band, is the regularity with which your songs have an incredibly catchy chorus. I thought you couldn't find a chorus catchier than Sirens, which was the biggest earworm I've ever had to contend with in my life. When you're recording that in the studio and you're going through the chorus again and again, if you're doing vocals, I mean, is that just in your head for absolutely days and days?
I would say so, yeah. Like that. I think like with a song like Sirens, you know, the main sort of tagline that I think gets everyone's attention is "I'm thinking about girls on white horses," and that was we knew that we had to have some sort of like hook line when we had the melody, and I sort of was playing like an acoustic guitar or something like that, and you know, kind of humming and, as I said, mush mouthing this chorus line, and it wasn't until sort of Indy and I started trading lines, and I wanted to kind of have this sort of girls and boys kind of chorus, sort of akin to say like a Panic at the Disco song or something like that, where it was kind of showing like two ends of or two sides to, you know, a particular conflict or this idea of conflict anyway. Yeah, no, these songs definitely do get stuck in our heads. I don't know about you, Connor, if there's been any songs that have been stuck in your head while we've been making this album, but certainly in mine.
Nah, honestly, I think we're probably not happy with the chorus until we're going home from the writing day and it's stuck in our heads. I think we keep workshopping it until we get to that point.
Definitely.
Yeah. I remember that was the case with Break the Rules, because we finished that song it finished its like earlier stage, like 14 months before it came out. Like we've been sitting on it for a while. Yeah, and we were working on the chorus, had quite a few different variations, quite a few different structures. And when we started thinking it was really catchy, that was when we knew we were like onto the right wavelength with it.
Nice. Yeah, in my head now, that's the one. It's constantly in my head. It doesn't matter how many other songs I've heard during the day, that one can just enter and it's stuck. And I'll wake up in the morning with the Break the Rules chorus in my head. So well done. That's very hard to do, but it's comforting, I suppose, to hear that doesn't just come like that out of the gate. That's something you work on and you iterate and you flex and you fix and you go, it's now at a point that we're happy with. And you've alluded to this a bit, Liam, because I was wondering how the vocal songwriting went, whether it was kind of lyrically driven, but it sounds to me, naively, and you can confirm or deny this, that it is sound first. You think of what you want the voice to sound like, and then you fit lyrics to it. Would that be the case?
Yes and no. I mean, it is definitely the case before lyrics, but before even the sound, I'm usually trying to develop a full concept and a story for the song, right, and basically sort of the A to B journey. And that's usually dictated, I suppose, by the sounds, so like by the music and what that music makes me feel. And as well as sort of, you know, what I happen to be thinking about that day. You know, maybe it's a conversation that I'm having amongst the other members of the band, or you know, maybe I've just seen something online that's, you know, given me a visceral reaction that I can't help but, you know, write and reflect upon that. So I guess in a way, yes, because the melody is going to come first, but before even the melody, I sort of have a concept in mind that's gonna drive home the message in the lyrics in the end anyway. So it sort of all happens at once a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then you've got such a variety of delivery styles. There's the kind of sort of rapping, spoken wordy moments. There's also obviously singing. There's the scream vocals. How do you determine which of those gears you're going to pull in a given part of the song? Is that led by what the musical change happens? Does the kind of song instrumentally get written first, or is it all kind of at the same time?
Sometimes it's song by song basis, because there's songs like The Wall where we had a full instrumental bounced out, and then I was writing to that. And in
Right.
that case, yeah, the music's definitely going to dictate um, my approach and the direction in how I'm going to express that. But I guess I would say that in terms of deciding how we approach, what kind of vocals are going to go in what section, I would say, yeah, the music's is definitely a big factor in that. I think also thinking about the overall shape of the arrangement and the structure. I don't think. I mean, we can always sort of start a song with screams and work our way into a melody, say like a fractured state of mind. But I think there's always an element of like trying to build to a crescendo, right? You don't want to kind of reveal all your cards at once. And it's been an interesting experience. I mean, exploring all these different ways of communicating through vocals, because for me, screaming sort of been something that's quite new, and I'm still learning and I'm still developing. I've only really been screaming since I rejoined the band as the frontman. So that
Really?
this album that we've been writing is really it's a time capsule of my development as a scream vocalist. And as far as rapping goes, it's like I've been writing raps and a big hip hop head for 10-15 years now, and it's that's sort of always been in a part in my arsenal. But now approaching screams, I'm actually kind of pulling from the rap influence a little bit in terms of how I'm phrasing things, or like the rhythm of how I'm delivering it. It's always coming from sort of
Right.
like a hip hop or rap perspective. So if you go back and listen to, say, like even the second verse of Sirens, when I was writing that, I was approaching that from like a rap flow, and then
I
using
see.
screams to kind of execute that section. So I hope that answers your question.
That's Yeah, 100. That's awesome. I mean, I play a few instruments, but my main one is drums. So I am totally enthralled by the rhythmic element of anything. I think that's why I've enjoyed what you've been doing with the scream side of things. It's not just, well, let's have a heavier emotive scream delivery. It's also rhythmically interesting, and it bounces around and through what the rest of the arrangement of the song is doing. And one thing I was nervous about a while ago, obviously, I first discovered the band and Will King was the vocalist, and they have such a massive range and delivery styles. And when I found out that they were leaving, I thought, well, rip. This band, there's no way you're going to find someone who can do that again. And then somehow they found you. When you were rejoining the band, did you have a quiet confidence that you knew you could deliver on the previous range and things you needed to do for like live gigs of the previous songs? Or were you trying to figure out in your head and chest and trying and not
Mm.
sure necessarily if you could, or how was your kind of confidence level coming in
Oh,
to fill those shoes, as it were?
what a complex question. It's I mean, I definitely I think there was a quiet confidence in terms of the melodic stuff. I felt like I could pull off a lot of the high ranged kind of singing, because that was something I aided Will when I was in the band with him, and I was playing guitar and doing sort of backing vocals and stuff. There was certainly there's certainly an element where I'd take some lines and that give him a bit of relief, kind of what Indy does now in our live show. He kind of takes some lines that give me a chance to actually take a breath.
Oh,
Um,
great. Yeah, that's
yeah,
important.
but in terms of, I mean, joining the band. It definitely felt like a monumental kind of uphill battle, because like I'd never learnt the love language songs while I was out of the band. Learning those love language songs, the lyrics and the melodies was something that I had to come into in preparation for our first tour. But like I said before, the screams were sort of the thing that felt like the biggest roadblock for me. It was like, oh, okay, there's
Right.
a whole element that I've never really explored or performed in its fullest capacity, and Yeah, that was definitely very nerve-wracking to sort of, our first my first show back was the date that we released a single called Left in the Dark, and it was the first date of the tour, like on the same night. And so we were playing that song. I didn't know what I was going to do in terms of performing as a metal frontman, so there was definitely a bit of teething, and I knew that there was an element of like, oh well, as time goes on, this will fall into place. But for now, it's like, it's just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and just hope for the best. So yeah, I don't know. The singing part of it, I wasn't too worried about, like I said, but yeah, Screams definitely got me a bit nervous.
Well, as a listener, it certainly seemed like you came out of the gate just completely nailing and carrying on the sound in the full range. And so that was great. And actually, you seem to be injecting your own creativity, your own style of things, and sort of elevating things in your own way. So that's been amazing to see. Connor, I'd love to find out a bit more about your input I've called you the synth master because you've got this kind of setup. I've seen glimpses of it in music videos and things. What is it? There's a sort of tap pad, but it's not like a drum kit sample pad. It's more finger tap, but it's not like an APC 40 or something. It's what is that you tap on?
It's called an E-Ray Touch. It's made by a French company called Embodme. And it's so sick. It's like it's a big touchpad pretty much. And it's got, X and Y coordinates, and then it's got depth perception as well. So you can do like velocity sensitivity, and then it's just completely open custom source. So for every song, I have like a completely different arrangement on it, where like, if, in one song hitting a button could be changing the sound that my keys are playing, or another song hitting the buttons could be drum samples. And then I can like put any kinds of samples onto it because we play a whole bunch of different random things we write into the songs. Yeah, it's sick. I use it a lot as well for like, if I'm playing a bass patch, I can have like a little slider on it. So as my finger's going up and down, it's changing how the bass synth sounds and all that kind of stuff. Huge shout out to Embodme. It's a very, very cool product.
Yeah, because when you started that, you said it's got X and Y. I mean, hang on. That's not just, you're not saying it's just the size of it. You mean that it tracks differently depending on distance, perhaps, from certain points on it when you're using it?
Yeah, it's pretty much a full iPad, and then you can push into it, and it knows how far you push into it as well. Yeah, it's crazy. That's amazing. It's really cool.
But then, I suppose live, if you've got, other instrumentation, drums and things, if you have adrenaline in you, you might hit the drums a little bit harder live, for example. Does that affect the sound that comes out if you're tapping it harder live with some adrenaline, or is that not really too much of a factor?
It does, but that's kind of no different to playing any other instrument, right? Like, there's a combination of like, you're playing harder in the live show, and that translates to just energy out the front. And then, it's just, I have to try my best to be a good musician and play the parts how they need to sound as well.
He does well.
Nice. And that's not the only thing you have, right? There's some other elements. What are the other bits and bobs you have as part of your kit?
Yeah, so I've got that pad in the center, and then I've got a 49 key just MIDI controller down the bottom for chords, and I do a lot of bass patches in the choruses and things like that. And then over on my right hand side, I've got a Roland SPD-SX, which is just a whole bunch of pads that you can hit with drumsticks. Nice. And then 2 like extra pads up the top. So I kind of designed the whole thing so that I can play different sounds in different ways depending on the song, and then I tried to approach it so it looks engaging as well. Like, any percussion parts I could finger drum, but it's probably more exciting from an audience for me to like play it with sticks, right? So yeah, it's really cool, and I play completely differently for every song, which makes it really like interesting and fresh for me as well.
Oh, that's dope. Because with those kind of elements, a lot of bands, if they do all of that exciting, interesting electronic additions and samples and things in the studio versions, you could just put that on a backing track and be like, hit play, and off you go. So is that a conscious choice that you've made as a band? Like, what can we do different this live? Do you have a click that you then perform to, or are you able to do it kind of without click? Okay, grand.
Yeah, and we still use a small amount of backing tracks because there's sections in the songs where I only have 2 hands, and there's
you only have so many. Yeah.
There's 7 different sampled parts. But yeah, I think the whole idea between like about bringing me into the band was that the songwriting was getting so much more like programming heavy, and there was going to be like half the set just coming out of a laptop. So we do our best to make it a live show.
That's so cool. And when it comes to adding the kind of electronic elements, you could, in theory, here's the problem I found when I was writing songs is it's hard to know when you're done because you could keep tweaking and adding forever. And I imagine in the electronic world, you could keep adding forever. How do you know when to stop before it becomes too much and cluttered and a mess? Like, how do you see the balance of the inclusion of that element?
I mean, from my personal perspective, like Lalik in the band, our drummer, is our band's producer. So the parts that I add to the songs, I'll write and like make different sounds like 30 times over what the song actually needs, and then I'll send it to him and he can pick through
it. And then Chris goes, all right, that's enough.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he's got the ear for like what's going to work. Yeah.
He's very good at determining when there's too much. And I think also like you said, there is an element of too much programming and layers, and especially when you start adding like vocals and you want that to kind of be the centerpiece of a song, and then it starts clashing. It's sort of like, okay, well, we need to kind of pull back a little bit here. So I guess it kind of is a bit of a band decision. We kind of work out what is needed, but I think at the end of the day, like Lalik is like that. He's the final editor, and he will decide what's in there and what's not. So
nice. Well, it seems to be working well thus far. But I can imagine once you get to the end of, say, like a verse or a chorus, and there's a bit of a gap for a musical breakdown. Connor's just on the side, be like, "Now, can I just?"
Yeah, actually, though,
dude, that's exactly what it is.
Actually, the things that Connor comes up with, like as like we call it, like sort of like ear candy. Like I don't know how you do it. I mean, I do know like because you've explained it to me, but I still don't know like how you come up with these things. It's so cool.
Yeah, I'm also kind of. How did you get into that world? You are Googling how to create unusual sounds, or is it just experimentation over the years in your bedroom? Like, how do you get to the point that you're at now with understanding the possibilities?
It's a bit of both. I think I'm more of a tech than a musician. My like foundations, to be honest. So I think I just really enjoyed learning. Like I use Ableton to write and perform.
Right.
So I think I just really enjoyed learning Ableton really intimately. And then within that ecosystem, there's so much room to just do weird things. And a lot of the time I'll just start making sounds and throw the first 7 away until I get to, the 8th one that's really cool. And then I'll start to get into a groove, and that'll kind of dictate the rest of the sounds and the elements that are being added. It's a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. And also, like, a lot of what I'm writing is not actually very musical. Like, all the other boys are a lot better at, like, the musical front, and it's all, like, kind of sonic sounds and sound design and things like that I'm throwing at the songs.
Sure. I think you're being slightly humble there, because there is definitely a musical element to it, and the dynamics that you're choosing with the sounds you make, and also some of them are within the key and kind of add to it in that way. It's very, very
thank
cool.
you, man.
Another thing I was curious to chat about is the what's the word I'm looking for here? The considered use of vocal effects such as auto-tune in certain moments of songs. When is that something that Chris would lead, going like, I think this would benefit sonically in the song from a little bit more of a kind of a, I guess, robotic sort of sound or more digital sound? Or is that something when you're writing that for that particular section, I'd love for this to sound a certain way? When do you choose to engage that kind of effect?
I would say it's definitely a conscious decision before we go to record it. So we'll sort of have an idea of what kind of sound. I mean, the beauty of like the different members of Windwaker is that we all have a different kind of set of skills that are our strengths, and we can rely upon each other. If we as an individual have a weakness, like we can outsource that to a different member. And as far as like the vocal effects go, like Chris and I have influences that kind of utilize these synthetic kind of vocal styles, and we're taking from those influences what we think has sounded good and how we could possibly either recreate it or do our own thing. So like when it comes to like even like the rapping kind of vocals and stuff like that, like we're actually not really putting on a lot of effects, but a lot of it's kind of done naturally.
Really?
So like something like The Wall, where I'm kind of got this like gruff, grizzly kind of low sounding vocal. It's the only thing that Chris has really put on it is like maybe like a little bit of distortion or something like that to just kind of get a bit of grit to come through and for it to stick out. But we try to kind of keep things, we've used vocal synth, and we use like plugins like Little Alter Boy to kind of alter the formants of the sound, and we've done that on a few different tracks. And but I think we generally save a lot of those sort of effects for like background vocals and that ear candy, as I was sort of saying before. Anything that's sort of like an ad lib or something like that, we'll add in like a hell of a lot of auto tune. But I think it's just like it just comes down to like stylistic taste.
Yeah, it's certainly the way you use it in your band. It certainly seems to be aesthetic, stylistic, intentional thing, and it's sort of only in a way that could potentially elevate the vocal. Like the Break the Rules chorus benefits massively from that more staccatoed, clean cut between notes at the end of the phrasing, and that's what helps making it insanely catchy somehow. But then in Fractured State of Mind, you've got that banger heavy start of the song, and then you have the handbrake turn into like the R&B moment, but that sort of gives it that quality of sound.
Absolutely.
There. And on first listen, you're like, what the fuck is going? And then, but once you get to know the song, you're then anticipating it and ready for it to try and like emulate it. It's very cool. How collaborative is the songwriting process from all members? Does it depend on the song? Can one of you maybe perhaps end up creating the meat of something and then present it to the rest of the gang, or do you have a process that you use for all of them?
Every song is different. I think across Hyperviolence, there's songs that every different member has started, and we've all had different hands in finishing. There's been a couple songs where certain members have been away, and the meat of it's been written by just those available to work on it. Yeah, honestly, I think Chris probably starts a fair few of the songs, but then like most of the like R&B stuff is all done by Liam. There's one song on the album that's just straight EDM that was written by like Indy and I predominantly, and then like Liam and Chris came on and wrote vocals. It's really, really song by song, and I think that's why no song ends up sounding particularly the same, which makes it really exciting.
Yeah, like I said before, like we all have our strengths, and we have these like these set of skills in our arsenal, and if we're trying to get across a certain idea or a certain style, then it's good to sort of source that from the person who kind of has that strength in that style. So, like, right. I mean, even like Jesse, for example, he started The Wall. He started the song like The Wall, but he also started the song like Break the Rules. So, wow. It probably doesn't necessarily always have to be like, oh, the R&B thing is from Liam, or the black metal thing is from Jesse, or whatever. But it usually will always come from a core idea or a demo that we've kind of bounced out, and we're presenting to the rest. Like one of us has started and then presenting it to the rest of the band, and getting that kind of that whole experience of everybody kind of putting in their 2 cents and putting in their influences, and it kind of starts to become a big gumbo pot of just like, all sorts of different influences. But we seem to make it work.
Nice. Do you have any common influences amongst you all that you all are fans of a certain band or artist or genre in particular, or is it very kind of eclectic amongst you?
I mean, like, you probably would say that metal would be the overlapping genre, but then even then, like within metal, like we all listen to such different things. So I don't know. Connor, what do you and I like? Do we both like EDM and like trap beats and shit?
Yeah, I think your and I's common interest is a lot of like Flume, maybe a little bit into the pop world as well.
I'd say actually that's a good one. pop world.
Yeah, honestly, like as a general sentiment, like none of us really listen to the same stuff, which is again why I think it works, because we all come into it with just very different like aims, and then when we collaborate, it comes out like it does with just weird stuff everywhere.
That's probably why it has such a variety within each song, because each one of you has your own take, and you're all kind of pulling it into this brand new place, and that's why no other band will sound like Windwaker, because you're not going to have that variety of input exactly replicated by some other people. Did you say flume? What's flume?
Ooh.
Flume, oh bro, Flume is it's an
I've googled it.
Australian...
It's like a flower shop. What's flume?
It's Flume. It's an Australian electronic producer.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like probably one of the biggest artists to come out of Australia in a long time. And he does really, really cool. He's a big influence for me. He's really good at like granular synthesis and interesting sound design and things like that. And he has he's just the producer, but he has a lot of rap features and things, which is where a lot of Liam and I's taste overlaps, I guess, with the weird electronic stuff with cool R&B flows.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm going to go on a deep dive of Flume after this call. Thanks for that.
Oh, there's some bangers out there, man. There's some bangers. We'll send you a list, maybe.
Great. Please do. But within that, though, what I do wonder is, like, all of your songs have such a variety within them. I almost think the strangest thing, the most surprising thing you could do would be for your next song to be a very straight-laced, like straight-up pop rock song. Is that likely, or is that just unlikely based on the influences and the style of songwriting and the way that things come out?
Can I answer with the eyes emoji?
Okay,
the
great,
eyes
great.
emoji.
Teasing what could be on the album, guys.
No, I think you kind of bang on the money. Actually, I don't know if I'm giving too much away, but the next single I think will satisfy that.
Okay.
I think it will satisfy
Very
that.
cool.
We're conscious of not pushing the fan base too hard as well. It's been like 5 very, very unique songs now, so
Yeah, true.
I think we're set out to finish it off with one that's just a bit more easy listening, but we wrote it, so it's still going to have its quirks.
Yeah, because I watch your stuff, Steve, and I really like your stuff because, one, you're really well spoken, and I think I can see that you love what you do, and even when you go into things that are a bit more like critiques, if for lack of a better word, I've always found that everything that you've said has always got like some basis to it. And even like when I've watched like your reaction to like I think it was Fractured State of Mind and maybe Break the Rules, and you had a couple of comments about the structuring of that, and I walked away from the video being like, I think you're totally right with some of the comments that you made, and genuinely I think that so. I don't know where I was going with that. I forgot.
It's about
the next song.
The expectations.
Yeah, so keeping the expectations. So, yeah, I think Connor's nailed it with. I think we've worked them pretty hard. We're giving a variety of singles now. Like I feel like we should. The next one will hopefully be just what we're just really good at. Like showcases just what we do. And not trying to break in more ground or anything like that.
Well, I mean, you do you. That's the thing. But you said an interesting word within that last sentence, which was the word should. And I would caution, like, if you're a creative person, don't worry about should. Like, we should maybe give them a break from, like, do whatever you want. Because, yes, all of the singles have been quite different, but they've all been very Windwaker. I don't think there's a single one you'd hear and be like, oh, who's this? It's a totally different band. And that's, I think, where the magic lies. But equally, if you are interested in doing a more straightforward song in your way, then do it. That's great. I'm excited for it either way. You've got a massive tour coming up in the States in support of Northlane. How did that come about? Is that your first? I don't know what your touring history has been like in the band Windwaker. Have you been to the US before, or is this kind of a first time go?
First time. This is the first time we've ever gone outside of Australia.
Wow.
So very excited.
What?
It's
Gosh.
a
that is
big
wild.
tour. I think it's 34 shows in 40 days, Connor. Is that right? Something like that.
Something like that. It's because 'cause Australian touring is like you're lucky to get 7 shows. So whatever it is,
Right.
it's a mind-bogglingly big number of shows for us. But
Have you?
it's
Yeah.
gonna be good.
Wow. So that's gonna be a whole different experience. I mean, I assume you're figuring out what is going to be, for example, your vocal warm-up routine to ensure that you can do 40 gigs, right?
Yeah.
What is the preparation for a tour like that in terms of that side of things, and also rehearsing as a band to get ready?
Well, we kind of got a bit of a taste of it when we did our first tour with me fronting the band, and we went from a 4-date Enter Shikari tour with a club show in between with Northlane to then embarking on a regional, like town, like small town kind of tour in Australia. So I think that equated to about something like 22 shows or something all up in the span of like 1 month. And so there was definitely some stints where there was like 8 shows in a row. So we got a bit of a taste of that. But yeah, this time around, I think it's definitely going to be heavy emphasis on the rest and the sleeping and trying to keep a good diet as best we can while we're over in the States. And yeah, as far as like vocal warm-ups and stuff go, like, I mean, that's something that I'm always kind of chipping away at and trying to find a consistent thing. I mean, I have my warm-ups and I have sort of my regiment that I go through and whatnot. Yeah. But, maybe I'm always learning things every time we're on tour. And like Marcus had so many great pointers last time that we toured with him that I'm sure I'll learn a lot more again, even touring with in Van Animate and Thornhill as well. So we've got a big powerhouse of range of singers to pick their brains with. But as far as rehearsing goes, I mean, we've just announced a couple sort of smaller shows in Victoria and a couple of the members' hometown, Wagga Wagga, and that'll be like a little bit of practice for us as well as like the actual in the room, rehearsal room sort of set up. But yeah, I don't know if you had anything more to add, Connor.
No, I was just going to say, I think one thing we're going to have to be conscious of is like touring in Australia, there's no bandwagons or buses or anything. It's you're in a van and then you're in accommodation and then you play the show. So I think having the freedom of, because we got an RV over there, so having the freedom of sleeping where we're going and then sleeping in the vehicle and then being able to do whatever we want on the off days is going to be interesting because it's our first time overseas. We're going to be like kids in a candy store wanting to go do stuff. Oh my God,
that's so exciting.
We're there for business. We've got to take care of ourselves as well. So it'll be interesting trying to find the balance between being a tourist and taking care of ourselves as well.
I don't have any sense really of where Windwaker is in the Aussie scene. Is it going to be a bit of a change of pace to be opening so early on in a 4-band bill, or is that something you do from time to time in Australia?
We haven't done it in Australia for a little while, so it'll be good to be in that role, because I think that there's certain, how would you put it? There's certain roles in where you're billed, you know what I mean? Like when you're an opening act, like obviously the idea is to kind of make people as comfortable as possible. And for a lot of those people, they might not know who you are. So making sure that first impression is the best that it can be. And on the opposite end, headlining there's a lot of responsibility there, of getting the people there in the first place. And, same with roles with, being second or third build. It's, it's got its own roles and its own challenges, and making sure that energy stays up. So no, I'm looking forward to kind of just opening the shows and then getting to just chill out and watch the other bands afterwards. Might be a good opportunity to get an early night while we can. Who knows? So
I'm finding it quite comforting that we're opening because we get a sound check, which is going to be an important thing over there because it's our first time not using our regular sound guy in a while as well. Even there's even weird things we've had to think about, like America has different power to Australia. So we're probably going to get over there and have to like troubleshoot the equipment and things like that. So I have quite a bit of comfort in knowing that we've got like more time and a little bit less pressure on the first
Good
time.
point.
We can iron out the kinks.
Yes, because after your sound check, nothing moves. Everything stays in place, and you get back on stage. It should all be in place, all the faders in the right move. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's a
Exactly.
gift as well to being able to play in front of a crowd that largely doesn't know your music. If it's kind of a new style or new songs and things, you get a real sense of, does this hit someone who doesn't have any context? So that could be interesting. And one of the questions actually from a viewer was, um, can they expect any unreleased songs being played on that US tour? I guess you probably got a shorter set, so I don't know if you've maybe had a chance to pack any of them in. But
I mean, they'll be unreleased right now at the time of this recording, but will they be unreleased by the time that we play them in America? I don't believe so. I think it'll be all released by the time that we're actually on stage in the States. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's been interesting putting the set list together too, because it's our first time over there, and like we're about to put out the second album, and there was an EP before that did quite well for the band as well. Trying to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, but also, you know, paying homage to the people that have been waiting a while to see us over there as well. So yeah, it's been a challenge finding the balance between old stuff, new stuff, etc.
There's too many songs.
God, of course, yeah.
There's too many songs to pick.
Yeah, well, how long is your set? Do you have half an hour, I assume, probably?
I think it's half an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be, I guess no time for small talk, just like...
I think we've managed to squeeze in like 8 songs, I think, 8 or 9. But it's about the same as what we did for Knotfest earlier this year too. It was the same length, so...
Yeah, I hadn't considered that before you said it, Connor, that you'll have fans who've been interested in seeing certain songs live for fucking years, and like, well, you got 30 minutes. There's the chance of them hearing maybe their favorite song. It depends on which one from your past, or 2 maybe if you throw that in. They get that's a tricky dilemma. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
When are you coming to the to the UK at some point? Is that on the hopeful horizon, or Europe tours, or is that in the works? You probably can't say anything about it if there is, but
it's on the hopeful horizon. I think at this stage, my partner's from the UK, and I have a strong affinity for Europe. So I would love to play some shows over there. Knock that off the bucket list. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hopeful that we can make it over there sometime in the next year, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, nice. It's really expensive for Australian bands to get out of Australia because we're in the middle of nowhere. So now that we've kind of cracked the US, and that's like, from the back end, like that's paid for. We've got our visas and everything. Now we can push to invest in getting to Europe now. So it's the next agenda item.
Great. Nice. Yeah, and I suppose in order to make it worthwhile financially, you can't really ping over to the UK for like a festival gig and then back. You'd want to have it as part of a larger amount while you're out there to continental Europe, etc. And that's a much more difficult logistical thing to line up, I imagine.
That's why it took so long for us to get to the States, because there was opportunities, but they weren't worthwhile in the sense that in terms of volume of shows, it might have been only like 2 festival appearances, and then that was the whole trip. So this time it's actually it's more worth it, because there's more area that we're getting to cover, and more shows that we get to play. So yeah. And
one of the questions that came in was, like, what is in the water in Australia? Because there's a kind of a meme online in the metal community now where it's like, oh, this new band's amazing, they're probably Australian. Like, what the fuck's going on over there? That like so many bands are great. Is there just a great spread of venues for up and coming bands to cut their teeth on, and it's a supportive scene? Or like, what do you think is contributing to such a surge in great music from Australia right now?
I honestly don't know. Hey, like all of our venues are drying up and closing, so it's definitely not that. Yeah.
Shit.
I think we've got a really healthy community here, regardless, and there's a lot of people that have passion for this kind of music here. It's quite a big scene, but I don't know why it's the Australian bands.
Maybe it's an element of like observing from a distance, And, you know, rather than being a band that's from America or from the UK and you're in the midst of it, you're sort of seeing
Yeah.
you're sort of seeing things from a global perspective. And I suppose everybody does because of the internet. But I think that there's cultural differences down here too. I think, as Connor said, there's a really dedicated alternative and metal audience and community here, and we're quite also like a very tight knit community here. When it comes to the music industry, a lot of people know, like we all sort of know all of each other. So um, I think it's a very supportive community, as you put it, and I think the creativity comes from just having a different perspective, a different kind of place that we can draw from. And, you know, there's plenty of bands that are just as fantastic as the ones that you have all heard of, but you might not have heard of them yet, and they're still yet to come. But yeah, I don't think there's any shortage of great music that's coming out of here. But to be able to pinpoint where, like, why that's the case, I think it's just, yeah, just a different perspective. I think it's just being able to view things from a distance.
Yeah, you might be right. Maybe if in the kind of the US and you kind of UK scene, if it's been popping for a while, everyone might be sort of doing a little bit of what everyone they can see is doing, and it becomes a little bit more similar between groups. And perhaps if you were in more of a pocket in Australia, you develop something unique and different, which when eventually people notice, it's like, oh, this is fresh, and that's exciting, and you pay more attention.
That's a very good point. I kind of back that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's great, I think it's great for everyone. Like it means that bands in other parts of the world are getting new inspiration, new things. Oh, you can do that? Oh, what did we do? I've always wanted to do that. Yeah, me too. Let's try that. And maybe that'll make for some unique things in the future. I'm still kind of waiting fearfully for the absolute avalanche of Sleep Token sounding bands. As much as they are my favorite band in the world, everyone's been like, well, that really works. So I'm surprised there hasn't been a wave of like masked bands doing prog R&B, you know?
I feel like Sleep Token though are like, if it becomes very clear if you're trying to replicate what they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just become the copy of that band. But I think we're seeing elements of their music coming through in other people's songs, but it might not just be that complete combination of sounds that Sleep Token, you know, do really well. You know, they might be taking a portion of what they do, you know, whether it be from the electronic and more poppy kind of ambient, you know, esoteric side, or then the heavy side. But it's kind of, I mean, metal music in a way is kind of become quite self-referential in a lot of ways. It's, you know, we're not really getting regional kind of sounds anymore. It's sort of, again, because of the internet, that globalization is kind of making it that gumbo pot. And we're all sort of pulling from that well, I think.
But what is exciting is that as much as it's, there's that global aspect and it's self-referential, it's so much less so than it used to be. If you consider bands back in the past, everyone sounded like Metallica or, you know, like the Iron Maidens and the rest. Now it's the variety of genre blending that's going on. And your band is an excellent example of that. It's so refreshing and is going to help take metal music to a wider audience, which is a great thing to help support the scene and the rest, but also just a different place that's more interesting, I think, sonically. So
there's always going to be that need. There's always going to be a need for nostalgic music and that, and, you know, and people will always kind of there'll be groups of people that will make, you know, more traditional music or a bit more nostalgic quality to them. But yeah, there's always going to be another subset of people that are trying to push it in another direction. And I'd like to group us in with that group too. So yeah, thank you.
You make a very good point, because I've just realized, like, my opinion is not necessarily the correct one. Like, some people just love that sound. Some people want to hear Metallica bands forever and lots of new versions of that, and it's perfectly fine. Like, there is room for absolutely everything. I happen to be in a position where I love the dynamic variety that comes with the music that, for example, you guys are making. So that's great news for me. And it's great that there's, I guess, with the advent of the internet and the global side of things, even what might be today more niche, like the kind of extreme black metal, whatever it might be, will have enough of an audience online that can work, and people can get their fix of that as well, which is no bad thing. Now, you got the album coming out very shortly, which is super exciting. Do you have any sense currently on, do you have like late night conversations as a band and think where you'd like to be in a few years from now? Do you have a musical direction arc you're trying to chase, or is it very much in the moment, what's happening? Let's chase that and see what happens.
We had the very start of that conversation the other night, but it was Lalek going, I think I've got the sound in my head for the next album, but then didn't tell us what it was.
So, what a tease.
Yeah. Who knows? I think half the fun is just writing and seeing what comes out.
Yeah. I feel like sort of my philosophy, even when I bring it to just the broad sense of life, is, if I dwell too much on the past, then I'll get depressed, and if I dwell too much on the future, then I'll get anxious. So I'm better off living in the present, right? And I kind of like the way that our music feels quite present. I mean, one aspect that I know that Chris or Lalek, particularly doesn't want in our music is that nostalgic quality. He always wants to be kind of pushing toward the future and pushing into a current sound. But I think we're like with Hyperviolence, this was sort of our not test run, but it was sort of our first go at this dynamic of people, right? And we're only going to get more closer and more comfortable with each other the more we do it. And I think we've definitely found a sound on this album, and I definitely think we've found some level of comfort in this album. But we're also always trying to do something new, and it's always based on how we're feeling right then in the moment. And I like that because it kind of creates almost like these time capsules, these entries, and we have our name put to them, and we can look back on them, as our catalog, as our work. That's what I look for anyway. So, yeah.
I've never really considered that aspect before. It made total sense that you're going to change as a group the more you get to know each other, and the experience, for example, of doing your US tour is probably going to change some things. So you can't predict the future of what you'll feel, what you prefer, what you think about, what you want to do creatively. So
yeah,
that's very cool.
The main objective is just to make good music.
So yeah, well, we're gonna start album 3 in the RV next month in Walmart car parks, and we've never written not in our Windwaker studio. So that'll be
definitely going to be
a very interesting thing. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
See what comes of that.
I was thinking of bands like Incubus, who I've been a fan of, and their early work was incredible and impassioned and angsty and just genius and fiery. It was because they were living in like terrible conditions in like horrible parts of town, and then got some success, and then they write this album where they've got this incredibly luxurious studio, and Morning View comes out. Like, yeah, of course that comes out of that kind of scenario. So I'm really looking forward to US RV core that you come out with for your next record.
Great things have come from adversity.
Yeah, amazing. Now, I'm someone who I care entirely sonically about things, and less connected generally with like lyrics or aesthetic and visual bits and pieces. But one thing I was curious about is when your first single came about with Liam having joined the band. Liam, you at that point, you had this sort of aesthetic of like a Tim Burton mad scientist. And it's like, this is interesting. This is quite an interesting kind of character. But then that seems to have developed or changed over time. Was that a concept for that video, or are you developing your own sense of your visual identity as you go along with the band as well?
Yeah, I feel like the aesthetic that I had at the start was sort of an overlap with the aesthetic that I had generally made for myself with my other project, Reside. And, I've always been a big Robert Smith Cure fanatic. I've always been a bit of a goth. And yeah, I don't know, that was just kind of how I was dressing and looking at the time. And then the hair started to grow and I couldn't spike it up anymore. And now it's easy to headbang, so I've kind of left it.
That's a great shot. That is one thing I do I do feel sad about not having long hairs, because how much more entertaining could the reaction videos be if I was pinwheeling
Oh,
in
mate.
the bigger moments? But I think it would look terrible. I don't think it would suit me.
You never know.
Or rather that it would look terrible. I think my wife would leave me. I think that's on no uncertain terms am I allowed to grow my hair out again.
Just get hair extensions at the door of the studio, and then they come off
There
and
we
they go
go.
in when you get through the door.
There we
You go.
Put on a wig. All right.
But just the
Next
mullet.
time you guys release a song and I record a reaction, I'll put a wig on and you'll know what it is.
Oh, dude, that's gotta happen
Do
now.
Ah, shit. Yeah, I put that in the universe. Uh-oh, that's a problem. Well, folks, thank you so very much for your time and your insight. I've loved exploring a bit more of the kind of creative drive behind what you've managed to do thus far. I think you're making incredibly energetic, impactful, and interesting music, but importantly, has the chorus hook, that ear candy for days. And I'm hoping that combination will really help more people discover the more interesting creative side of things that you do as well. So best of luck with the tour with Northlane in the US. I'll cross my fingers that you head to the UK at some point in the future as well. And good luck with the album in July as well. Thanks for your time, folks.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for always sharing our music with your community. We like your channel a lot. We watch it ourselves.
You're very kind. Thanks. I appreciate that. What a cool chat. What a cool fucking band. Thank you again to Liam and Connor for sharing their time and their insights during that conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Hopefully you did enjoy listening or watching that as well on whatever platform you're enjoying this from. If you're based in North America, maybe have a look at some of the dates of the upcoming tour, see if you can catch them live, and look out for the album coming out soon as well. That should be an absolute ripper. If you enjoyed this and you want to connect with me about the podcast, there's a link in the description to a Discord server. It's completely free to join. You can chat to me about music, bands, and other like-minded folks in the scene as well. Thank you for your time and attention. Hopefully you'll enjoy one of these episodes again real soon.